Okay, tonight on Crest, Tom and I spoke to Llantwit's finest, Mark Vaughan, about Llantwit, contest successes, contest failures, and everything in between. And most importantly, board shorts. Why on earth does he wear them into the middle of winter? It's all coming up tonight. Is he a purist? One thing's for certain, he's a legend.
We're joined by board shorts advocate, contest machine, charger, carver, lately punter and WSF stalwart Mark Vaughan.
Vaughnie's here to fill us in on the state of modern surfing in Wales, talking past, present, future, and some articles of obscurity too. Stay tuned, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, how's things, Mark?
Very good, thank you very much, Tom. A bit sunburned. It was a bit windy and a bit sunny.
That's a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
We're going to be hearing plenty from you shortly. But before that, Rob, good to see you again after your rafting and camping trip to the Scilly Isles.
Yeah, actually it got cancelled, Tom.
Oh,
and,
no.
Yeah, I got called back into work with the reintroduction of children into schools, unfortunately. So the Scilly Isles will have to wait. But let's move on to intros. And before we get into our guests, to my left, it's the surfing fraternity or sorority's first recipient of the AWC Award. That's the Order of the Welsh Commonwealth for his services to talking. Yes, always keen to spin a yarn, he was bestowed with this honour by the King of Wales, Mark Drakeford, at a ceremony held in the Newydd Fawreddog room at the Senedd building in Cardiff Bay last weekend. We are not worthy. It's Tom Anderson. How are you, Tom?
I'm all right. Well, actually, I'm going to do some talking this time. I think mine's going to come in a bit longer than yours. Am I right? It's the inventor of the left-handed beer cooler that was rejected by the Dragon's Den pre-show research team, only to be taken up by American comedy actor Will Ferrell. You may have heard of the latter's hit Netflix movie, Eurovision, and that it was over 5 years in production, but what isn't so well known is that it was a lengthy flirtation with the tale of the Kylie cooler's persistence and dedication, which had so captured Ferrell's imagination to the point of distraction. In the end, sadly, the Newport option fell through, as only Owen Wilson was available to play him, and both a Netflix blockbuster and a Welsh surfing podcast were duly conceived. I know which project is the more important. It's Robert Webster Blythe.
Wow.
Right, so, Vaughanie, what happens here now?
Right, okay. I guess I'm not meant to comment at those points.
No, you are meant to comment now, right? Because what's going to happen
It was like, who's the winner?
It's a competition. So far, Rob's actually got a 2-0 lead, so I'm hoping you're going to throw me a lifeline here. I mean, he did say I was going to talk a lot, and I did talk a lot.
Tom, I'm sorry. It's just like you shot yourself in the foot. It's a straight Rob, hands down, no question. Straight.
This is actually going to run on now. The running joke is now going to be the guest giving it to Rob.
Mate, have you ever seen a question of sport when Phil Tufnell always loses to what's his name, Cheeky Chappie?
Yeah, exactly.
So that is you. You are now adopted.
Phil Tufnell. But,
yeah, well, you were Phil Tufnell. Unfortunately for you, Rob, you're now Matt Dawson. Matt Dawson.
Gosh.
Yeah.
But
you know, he's a British Lion.
First off, then, welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, Tom.
This is your first full exposure to the Crest experience, having of course contributed to our Surf Trip Nightmares episode. It's lovely to have you with us.
It's nice to be sat alongside you gentlemen, looking very tanned and bronzed. And
cheers. As Rob mentioned in the intro, we're really looking forward to this one, but we're a little nervous that we're not going to be able to fit it all in, so I suspect that you might be a return visitor to Crest Towers in the future at some point.
Okay.
And in the spirit of another Welsh seaside tale, to begin at the beginning, Mark, Llantwit, quite the place to grow up. So tell us about your route into surfing.
Route into the surfing was through a mate of mine I was in school with, and he was buying a board off Jock, Mark Jones Boner. He's got a guy with a million nicknames, I think everyone knows him. And he was buying a fluoro board off Jock, and I went along for the ride, and I was like, wow, that looks cool, and ended up buying, my mate who was buying Jock's board, his board off him, which is like a 7.0 blue and white pop out lightning bolt single fin, which I was only 12, maybe 13. 1987 now we're talking, and it was way too big. I couldn't even get my arm around it to carry it, so it was nicknamed the Titanic. It's quite an amusing story because it went through quite a few hands within the Llantwit surfing community, and one of the boys, Lee, he had it off me for a while, and he lost it at high tide Llantwit. He just gave up, couldn't get in, and just let it go out to sea.
Went on up the
Like a
channel or something,
Viking.
didn't it?
Yeah. When it came back the next day, it was on the high tide line, so he got it back. It was like
Boomerang.
it was
Like Wayne
the
Edwards.
Yeah. Do you know where it is now?
I don't know. It should be in a museum or locked away. It wasn't safe. It actually responsible for my first nose break as well. So yeah, my first nose break. But yeah, it was inaptly named the Titanic because it didn't actually sink. It returned. So there we go.
Llantwit, there's quite a variety of ways at Llantwit then. So you learn to surf there, you start in the beachy, I'm assuming, at Llantwit. That's where someone who's a complete beginner would start, right?
Yeah, you stand on what's known as the beach, which is the sandy little bit of that we have on the right hand side just at low tide, which the sand comes and goes. It's really sandy at the moment, but as soon as you can basically get to your feet, you've got what's known as the left hand side, which is the right hand point break, which is a nice long wall in right, easy to get to your feet. It's not hollow. It's a really good introduction when you're at that beginner level to get used to going along the wall, and you can clock up a fair bit of time on your feet, which is by Welsh standards, if you're surfing somewhere like Crest,
it's important,
it takes a lot longer to get that sort of time on the board. So yeah.
And then you've got that peak in the middle as well.
Yeah, the point.
Has been used in a couple of comps. People are also famous for its very strong rip.
Yep.
So you put all those waves together then, do you think that there's a particular sort of Llantwit type of surfer that comes from when you add those waves together?
Yeah.
What does it do to a surfer?
I think it's you certainly learn to cut back and paddle. That's something, especially the goofies. They've all got a pretty strong. If you go through all the goofies in Llantwit, they can all come off the heels and rebound off the white pretty well. And I don't know. I think we were lucky with the variety of waves because even at other stages of the tide, it constantly changes. You've got the ledges, and even some ways that we didn't know about, like mini chokes, which is just like a shoulder high little 5-second tube, and high tide does some funky things. But yeah, the Llantwit surfer is generally, I think we've got a high standard, and I think the wave quality is as a result, because when it's on, it's really, really good waves.
Absolutely, and talking about, as you said, there's quite a few talents coming out of Llantwit, and there's been many over the years. When you first started, like you said, back in '87,
yeah,
was there anyone in particular back then, right at the beginning, that you looked up to?
I think because I kind of fell into surfing by chance, and I didn't really know anyone that surfed other than my mate that was buying this board, and but within Andrew Staples was like the kingpin at the time. Nails. He was sponsored by Two's company, and he was kind of the golden boy of Llantwit surfing. And you had Morgan Williams as well, and of course the Bright brothers, Colin and Gwyn. And Colin was already off to Europeans and even World Championships, and so he was the kind of mentor competitively, Colin. And there were other guys around at the time that all surfed well, and took you under your wing. Or I'm not sure anyone took under my wing more. I think the having the river very close proximity to where we all used to get changed was good. Gromit had abused the zone, because a amount of us that got chucked in there in the winter, or leave us stuff down the beach, you get nicked and your food eaten, all that kind of stuff. So it was good rapport back then, that's for sure.
And this is of course a time when you look in the surf media, you look in the mags, you're seeing people like Mike Slam Lambrisi and Bud Lamas and
The Bud Pro Tour.
Yeah, like the kind of the web glove contest surfer is the epitome.
Richie
of
Collins.
Surf glory. Richie Collins, yeah, Skeletor.
Yeah.
So as an aspiring surfer back then, a competition is a very important thing to do, and and it's the model, isn't it? You get your contest results, you fax them off to some company, you beg them for a sponsorship, and it kind of runs from there. And of course, in Colin Bright. At Llantwit, you had a very successful competitive surfer. Was it early 90s when he won the European Masters?
Sorry to interrupt there, and just for our younger viewers or listeners, a fax is like an old text.
Yes. Yeah.
This is true, yeah. It's like a telegram, yeah. So you telegram your contest results in.
Well, you still got a fax in work.
So
People sometimes use.
What was your what was your first big couple of telegrams that you sent off in terms of contest results then?
I think it was weird because Llantwit, firstly, even with Colin, who was very successful, and
Was it European Champ 93?
93 up in Thurso. I was up there for that as master, and that was over 35s. But Llantwit as a break, it's a small surfing community, very big lifeguard community, and they were very successful in their own right. But the surf community was, I think, in respects to Porthcawl and Swansea, we were quite kind of the poorer relation. But that 80s surf drive, there was a lot of us, and I had a little local success and won a little event, Llantwit event, and that at 13, 14 or whatever it was, that went to my head pretty quickly. And then in 1989, I won the Welsh National Cadets, which was, I think it was under 15 then, rather than under 16. So then that was my first fax to Wave Graffiti.
Wave Graffiti.
To Chris Bynan and Johnny P. And I remember it really well because I got this letter back from them, which was great, and it said, you know, they would sponsor me, and that was great. And I kind of misinterpreted the letter because it said that you'd have. It was a 5% discount on your boards.
That's all right.
But it was like you would pay 95%. So I read that as a grommet, and not can tell I took 2 attempts to pass maths. I read that as a 95% discount. So I was waltzed into school, all, you know, hey, I got a sponsorship, and I did have a sponsorship of sorts, and I was very grateful at the time, and I still am very grateful to anyone that discounts or provides any kind of services for free, but it did knock me back a bit when I had to write the cheque, or my parents did.
And carrying on in that vein about competitions, I remember you telling me about a particular contest, presumably when you were a little bit older, the Cornish and Open, where without your knowledge, you had a bit of a run-in with one of the Nuki lads, didn't you, that would later come back to...
Yeah, that was actually the same. That was 1989, because I'd won the cadets. Hugh and Linda, but I was going as there was a Welsh team for the British Nationals back then, so I didn't really know anyone. Colin was down there, and a guy called Nathan Solis, who was kneeboarding from Llantwit. But my parents decided to go to Cornwall for a week's holiday, and there was I'd stayed up in Harlyn, and friends of mine told me about the Cornish and Open, so I went down and entered. I went through a few heats, surprisingly, and during one of the heats I was duck diving, I slipped off my board, and my board, unbeknown to me, hit one of my fellow competitors. Now, had I realised this, I would have obviously apologised, but you know, I was in the zone, and it was a horrible 2-3 foot windy rainy day, and then I came out the sea, and there was a bit of a kerfuffle of all these Nuki grommets kind of eyeing me and all this, and I just thought, it's just because I was Welsh. And a weekend later it was the British Nationals, and I'm walking down to a heat with Russell, and I'd never met Russell, and he had obviously got wind of what had happened, and he just came up to me and as we were walking out, he said, "Do you want to fight?" And I was like, now I was only 15. Russell probably would have been, his birthday's December time, I think, so he'd been about 13. Yeah. So there was a height difference. Yeah. I wasn't a big guy. I was like 5'2" at the best, but Russell was probably about 4'10" at that time. So I fancied my chances. But I think looking back, they probably would have been. He probably would have got the better of me then. But
he'd have had those older brothers backing him up.
Yeah, I didn't even know about he had older brothers. And so yeah, so that took me back a bit, and I think he beat me as well. So yeah, first experience of meeting Russell, that was classic.
And then that would go on, yourself and Russell Winter, to become quite a lengthy sparring partnership or a rivalry through the junior ranks, and you were teammates in the GB squad together, but you can boast a fairly decent record against Russell Winter, can't you?
In my last junior year, I mean, it was the way to qualify for the GB team then, it was over 2 years. So, and I was a kid that didn't grow until, I mean, you know, I was still at 17, I was 5'0", and then all of a sudden sprouted overnight, and that physically gave me a good advantage in my last junior year, that I was able to sort of catch up, and I felt my surfing had progressed a lot. I think the first contest that year didn't do very well, but then there was like 4 British Cups and the British Nationals, and I think I seem to remember I think I got maybe 2 or 3 first, couple of seconds, but that first event was awful. So I think, yeah, it was. I guess from that year I stopped Russ winning the British Nationals, which must have been a nightmare for him, because it was always stepping stones for Russ to go on to.
Well,
to be fair, he did beat me in the European Juniors in the final that year, so he got his payback. But we had a lot of heats together around that time, and of course it's not just the finals; it's all the lead up heats. And I was a bit of a thorn in the Winter's side for a few years, the Stephen Dean as well. But we had some good heats together, and Russell was incredibly competitive to surf against. Like, just you can see why he did so well. He deserved it, because he was.
Yeah, because of course, you know, this is the guy that goes on to sort of have Britain's best record really as a professional surfer, isn't it? You know, in terms of like the sort of singular heights, you know, getting to a semi-final at one point in one of the man-on-man WCT contests. And
I think the Russell's progression. We went to the Worlds in '92, as you mentioned, and you know, he was a big name there amongst. I mean, when the Worlds through the ISA was. You know, it was big names there. I mean, the Aussies were coached by Rabbit.
Was one of them,
it was only 2 years later, after Slater went to Japan in 1990, I think, and that was the last one he did until recently. Like the Lopez's were there. There was all sorts of big names. Margot was there for Australia. Phipsy, who you know, was there he made the final. But Russ was he was a really big name, and whilst he I think got to the quarters in the Worlds, he then. Like a year later, he was up at that Euros at Colin, won the Master final, and
stitched up by the French there, wasn't he?
I watched it. It was, you know, that wouldn't happen in today's surfing. Best 2, you know, priority. But
because the three French surfers organised turns around him, didn't they?
They did, and it was small, inconsistent, perfectly clean thurso. But I remember seeing the French team stood on day 1 of that contest watching Russell surfing Acagil, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it, and he took off on a 4 or 5 foot right and just that typical Russell power turn. And I think then even the French all looked up and took note, and they were, you know, a good team. But he was 17 then, Russell, and you know, he's still only a kid, and I think his surfing competitively and his forehand surfing especially. I watched a lot of his stuff online, you know, places like Haliva and Sunset. He's solid, and he had to surf chopes, big chopes as well, heats and pipe. Not too many people in Britain can claim to have had to do that in a heat.
Yeah, absolutely not. And you mentioned, was it '92 the first World you went to with him?
Yeah, I actually went as a reserve. It was the full the full winter team. So you had Russell, right. Dean, Steve, and Mick and
Dad,
and Anita. It was an experience.
There's a winter family holiday then.
Well, kind of. There was myself, Bartlett, Daz Wright, Gabe Davies, Paul Lovell, because Paul he'd made the team, and Ben Baird, and I was as a reserve, kind of hoping that somebody somewhere would get hurt or drop out, and that didn't materialise. And but I'd had an incredible run, which. Because, as I say, that ranking system, I was like 400th in Britain the previous year, and then all of a sudden I'd won the British, I'd won a British Cup, I come second in another British Cup, I'd got a Cornish Open final, the Euro Junior final, so it was kind of like, well, we should take Vaughanie for the experience, and I think it helped that Hugh and Linda were in charge.
And talking of other British team duties, and Ecuador in 2004 was a big moment for you, wasn't it? Representing your country as an open surfer at the World Games, was that a significant goal?
I think for me it was, because of the era I grew up in, was always that to represent, first of all, Wales, which, you know, that was always, you know, perhaps, you know, the Gareth Bale school of the greatest honour maybe, but over the Britain, I don't know, it's a hard one, but that was a goal I wanted to tick off. I always wanted to surf for Britain and achieve that through my own merit. And because I think I'd missed out so kind of cruelly in a way, because on the basis of my performance in '92, if it was based on that year, I'd have walked into the team, because it was over a 2-year period. So it took a long time, 12 years later to get
It's tough,
that
was it?
chance.
It's 6 open surfers that go.
There was
or
4
it
then.
down to 4?
It went to 6 and now it's down to 3. And the ISA games had a period of what's going to happen with it, and that Ecuador one was a good example because Hira Tirifan Atufa, yeah, I really struggle with that. He won it in Ecuador. They were the Tahitian team was staying in the same premises, same hotel, and we actually came back from the beach after he'd won the Worlds. It was pretty sick with all the Tahitians. So so it was a lifetime achievement to get to that World contest on my own merit. So
as much of an achievement as winning the Welsh. So you first won the Welsh in 2006, and then of course, surely this was the more important one, 2011 on home turf in some of the best waves that the Welsh has ever seen.
I think it was 2007, but I think we'll roll with it. It may have been 2000. I'll have to have a look. But yeah, I think again, growing up, the Welsh was. Greg Owen loves this because the Welsh for Llantwit people was a weekend away. It was kind of like a national holiday for Llantwit people to go down West Wales, get blind drunk, some surf, some enter the contest, and enjoy themselves down west. So, and I remember seeing Ian Cat Thompson, the first Welsh I ever went to, and I was just like, because he was all over a Wavelength magazine article at the time, and I was just like, wow, Cat Thompson. And there was a lot of young Llantwit surfers at that time, all similar ages. We'd just be like, oh wow, just imagine winning the Welsh, and that certainly lit a fuse for me. And I always figured that after a few years, when I got older, junior success, that sooner or later I'd win the Welsh. But then it was like, Jesus, it went on a long time, longer than I had anticipated. And yeah, I was 32 years of age, I think, when I won the Welsh finally. So, and yeah, I remember none of my mates were there, none of my family, I don't think, but I picked up the phone on the way back, and I rang a couple of really close friends. Like I think Bateman was there. He was there actually.
So this is a Llantwit legend, Bateman.
And he knew how much it meant to me, and he was actually head judge for the event. And there was myself, James Jones, Lloyd Cole, and Greg Owen in the final. 4 goofy foots, sun glaring, 3 to 4 foot freshy.
And would I be right in saying that all 3 of those already had a title at that point?
I think they did. Yeah. I was the only one that didn't. Yeah, because James had done the double the year before, and I actually did the double because I've done the
Lloyd through the early 2000s and Greg through the late 90s into the early 2000s. Yeah.
But my first wave in the heat, I did a few wiggles at one of those low tide middle bay, a few wiggles at the back. Managed to get the reform through the inside, couple of hits, and I had a little cover up. And that cover-up was a defining moment because the judges couldn't quite decide
We're on best 2 waves at this point, aren't we?
No, I think it might have been best 3 still then. I may have gone to best 2.
We'd be right in the deep
I'd have to check. Yeah. Okay. But it was, the judges were kind of like, they couldn't decipher because we're all pretty similar, styles and sizes. And anyway, Bateman could decipher it was me by the style, and then as I came out, he's like, talk me through your first wave, and that was a defining moment. But it was a monkey off my back, massive. It was the most incredible feeling. I rung the boys, I rung Jock, and my brother, my dad, mum, everyone, and straight to the bed. Big Llantwit.
The holiday weekend.
Yeah, booze up.
Did that feel as good as the 2011 one when it was at home? I mean, I remember you were absolutely stoked in 2011.
I mean, that one again, that was a weird one because the Welsh had been split because it was a poor forecast over the traditional bank holiday.
So the juniors ran one week, didn't they?
Yeah, and we had to run the juniors because there was a Euro Juniors or something going on. And we also ran the Masters and the over somethings because a lot of them took the kids to the Nationals. So I won the over 35s, and then we ended up running the second part of the Welsh Nationals, the senior events, if you like, the open events, at Llantwit because the forecast was horrendous for Freshie on the Saturday. Small tides, and it was, I think it was the only time it's been moved from Freshie, maybe apart from Manaby or that area forever. And it was great. I had a good run, but this is me. I'd surfed the senior final first. I had something like 6-7 heats that day, and with the Llantwit Rip on the Sunday finals. It was beautiful.
We
sunny
were actually
weather.
talking about that senior final on the last episode last week with Gwen Spurlock. Actually,
Right, okay. I haven't, because I'm yet to listen.
Yeah, no, Gwen was in the week before, wasn't she? And we were talking about it. And I was making the call that Nick Reed's performance in that seniors final earlier that day
Yeah.
was as dominant as I've ever seen. You know, and then of course later on it got a little bit smaller for the open final, didn't it? And you took to the air, I think.
I think that senior final grated me because I come second.
Yeah.
And the open final, I kind of count. I only got 2 waves because I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And trying to double up, which.
And you did go to the air, or did you?
I think I might have done it. Yeah, I did a lot.
I
I got a wave at the second wave. I did a number of sort of quite. I was quite into doing my tail slides, going backwards for a bit, and then bringing around. I did may have done an air potential.
Because at that point, Lloyd Cole would have been in the lead, and then you sort of took it from him. At the
my brother was in the final.
Yeah,
you know that was the perhaps the not to be guff. Because he's my brother, and I actually there was one point in that heat I was like there was a right came through and I could have gone, and I was like no, I'll let Guff have it because I knew he'd love that on his forehand, and I was spent, but I got this one that was I think a few of the judges got a bit carried away, gave it a 9 or something, and and that was amazing, but I'd missed that. Nick Reed spoiled my treble dream. So by 1 place, and that knocked me. It still does. I'm still like, how did I not manage to win that heat? But so you can get in a rhythm with Llantwit, and that's the.
It was a countback as well. Your win over Lloyd Cole in that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was super tight. And
Jamie Bateman was off with Anne Blythe. Rob's looking up the rules on countbacks. They were.
Well, I thought I'd done. I didn't even think I was in for a chance.
Yeah.
I thought I'd come third, maybe fourth. So when the result was announced, there was nobody more surprised than me. So it was pretty sweet. But it was a weird one because the waves were pumping that day. It was like 3-4 foot, super clean, boiling hot, a total role reversal the day before.
Yeah.
And everyone that was associated with the contest was just like, let's wrap it up and get down the coast, and people
we
were
we were in scare within an hour of that finishing,
So I remember being sat on the beach exhausted, and it was just like sort of people, an hour later, like nothing had happened. It was a strange feeling, but sweet all the same.
Brilliant. And to take it back a little bit, back to the World Games in 2004, that qualification, you said how much it meant to you, but that qualification was a long time coming, wasn't it? And is there anything in particular that you cite as being responsible for that? Had anything changed in your surfing?
My life, I started working at 17, one day after my 17th birthday, on a Monday, and that was it. I've been in work full time ever since. So I hadn't had that opportunity to travel and do the thing that a lot of people get to do and spend a year going around Oz, Indo and all those well-trodden paths, and a summer in France and Europe. So I'd never managed to be able to do that. And it always felt that at events it was always a catch-up kind of thing. I'd arrive, I'd come from work, I'd be there in the morning. It was always a rush. Most people had been there for a week. So that just before, I think 2002, I took a 3-month break from work. I kind of begged the old man for a bit of some much needed time away. It was hard seeing a lot of friends.
Yeah.
And my brother was travelling as well then. He'd been away for I'm not quite sure how he managed to get out of it, but probably because he did much better in school than me.
It's the younger sibling.
Your brother Gareth Guff was employed in the same company.
Yeah, but perhaps he had more faith in his abilities to go and travel the world, and was a stronger character.
More dispensable, perhaps.
No, he's just as required as I am. But I think that I spent 3 months away. My surfing progressed. I surfed with a lot of good people, and in the Byron area in Australia, and Superbank, and then went to Indo with Nathan. 21 days on a boat in Mentawais and cruising around with we were with a real international group. There's a couple of people from South Africa, Portugal, Japan, Hawaii, America. There's really good surfers, but that takes and you surf with good people, it sort of brings you on. And so then the following year I was started competing more again, and I had a good year. You know, I got a semi-final. I think I made the final of the Welsh. That was my first one. I think Rhino beat me, and then made I think it was the semis, maybe the final of the British Nationals and Open, and then went to the Euros in Gran Canaria. And yeah, I'd just gotten a real role there. There was really, really good teams there from all of the Portuguese, Spanish, French. They had full teams. I think there's the Israeli team, Adi Gusker, and he was there, and those sorts of people. Marlon Lipka, you know, all sorts. And I managed to get to I was still in the main event of that at the semi-finals when they had to call the event off due to a sewage outlet breaking due to flooding in Gran Canaria. When does that happen? And but that put me in a good ranking, and I was doing the UK Pro Tour thing. That was you know, I was sitting pretty high on that at the time, top 6 or 8. So yeah, I managed to fall into the British team. So that was as a result of that. So it was pretty good timing, really.
That boat trip you're talking about, long time, 21 days on the boat. I didn't realise it was that long. Did you go a bit troppo after? Because I've heard people say the sort of 10, 12 is about optimal.
It takes. I mean, fortunately I'd done a boat trip before in '96 with a lot of the Welsh boys in Mentaris, and early days in the Mentaris. That was amazing. So I knew what to expect, and when we did that boat trip, it was really quite a small boat, and. When we went on this one, it was 21 days on this a much bigger boat. It's still small confinement, and being with Nath, I travel a lot with Nath, and it was. We had some flat days. You know, we sailed a lot. It was like 2-3 days where we didn't surf. We climbed Krakatoa one day because there was nothing else to do, and you know, it's a volcano, and it was boiling hot under your feet. So that was random.
I think one of the things that, you know, I want to congratulate you on about that boat trip is that I bumped into an Australian fella a year later who'd been in the area at the time that boat had come through, and he'd met you and Nath.
All right, okay.
And,
wow.
And he talked about you guys as being like rippers. And to me, regardless of what you do in a contest, for me the sort of greatest thing that could ever happen is if one of those world superpowers doesn't sort of say, "Oh, you surf okay," for someone from Wales, or you know, and to just be told, like, you know, "Hey, those guys ripped," with like just indiscriminately told that. And I remember thinking at the time, like, good work, boys. That is properly putting Wales on the map, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting trip because we had Thunders quite big. You know, for us, and we had a Mayan Goodwin on the trip, who was a pipeline charger. He actually got a terrible accident not too long ago. Somebody hit him. I think it was, I can't remember his knee or his head, something like that. But Mayan was, you know, we all looked at Mayan, and he was an incredible guy. He was like 21, but he knew more about the water than all of us put together in terms of fishing, sailing, everything, winds, currents, and we all looked at him, and he kind of set us on that on the big days, you know, just that line and how to get tubed, and it was a good experience.
Or before that, then most of your travel was always quite like short stints. Like, was it for comps or
22 days holiday a year? That's it, and your bank holidays.
And so you had to make do with that.
So if I went to Euros, that was 12 days. So I'd leave, you know.
But you managed to get to the North Shore a few times, though.
Only the once.
Right.
And that's probably one of my biggest regrets. Well, it is definitely one of my biggest regrets, because you know, Nath, who's been, God, you know, I think he's done 11 plus, maybe 12 seasons, and he was going from a young age, and a few of the other boys, like I think Kieran Thompson's been a couple of times, Colin. And the North Shore, have you been there, or?
I haven't.
Yeah. Rob?
It is impossible in Rob and I's line of work at the moment. Until they move those semesters around.
So I would give Christmas.
Yeah.
You
need a while though, don't you?
Do you remember? Well, yeah, you definitely need a while, 100%. Do you remember there was a Billabong? I think it was Surf into Summer '80s film.
Yeah.
And there was a guy voiceover. He was like, "Hey man, you know, no matter who you are, how good you can surf, you should go to Hawaii. It's the thing to do. And maybe one day you'll bottom turn, set a crisp line, and get the wave of your life." And that,
I know it. Yeah.
That he's right. you must go as a surfer. You owe it to yourself to go to Hawaii.
It's
even if you sit on the beach.
It's happening.
Which I did.
I've concocted various plans to try and get there. A few of which I should probably have to tell you about off air. But it's going to happen, and I'm sure it's going to happen for you as well, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah.
I'd love to go back, but I had 2 weeks there with Nath and Richie Sills, who was an incredible character.
This is the guy from Durban, Richie Sills. He's bit of a
pipeline
crazy,
charger. Pipeline charger's got.
Yeah, you told me a really interesting story about Richie Sills in Hawaii concerning some of the big dogs.
Yeah, Richie has a reputation in Hawaii.
He's got a screw loose.
I wouldn't say he's got a screw loose. Richie is very. Maybe he has. I don't know. I didn't know him so much when he was younger, but he is just an incredible.
I was in Durban in was it 99 or 2000, and he'd just gone to Hawaii then, and I think he'd had some terrible accident and his head like stapled together or something.
Oh, probably no.
And the reputation he had then was like,
he's the absolute
guy no fear at all.
Yeah, I mean, he got 10-point ride in a heat. He had a lot of trouble with the hui over there, right. And there was a situation that was resolved with him having had a number of beatings from the hui. I think that heat where he got a 10, I think he recalls running down to the heat through the trees and literally grabbing his vest, running in, getting a 10, screaming at the judges, and then running out to escape the hui again. I
think there was, around one of those years, a few mix-ups to do with South Africans and the hui, wasn't there? Because I think, didn't Elijah Young went to J Bay and got beaten up by the J Bay Underground or something like that? And then they had it in for other South Africans from other places.
I think, it's stuff I didn't know nothing about. But going to the North Shore and meeting up with Silsey, he was a reputation.
Yeah.
And Nath, who had so much experience. I mean, I felt. Bear in mind, I'm older than both of them.
You've got to charge.
Yeah, I was older than both of them, and I felt like they were holding my hand.
Up to you for a lot of his sort of surfing life, and
Yeah, I think because Nathan and I had done a lot of travelling, we were quite even. Other than when we stepped into Hawaii, I was like, wow, I can see like Nath was clearly so much more comfortable everywhere. But the 2 weeks that I had there was just like we got every single ways you can imagine, proper pipe, number of times, sunset, like 12, 15 foot, perfect offshore. Waimea broke, got small off the wall, got Rockies, didn't go to Hull either, but it's just Jocko's. I was like, Jocko's great, finally a nice tame wave to go and surf. No, Jocko's is really, really, really like solid. It's a scary place. Pipe, just horrendously scary.
And you said, but the regret then is what, not going more times? Because it sounds like you've got no regrets of the one time when you did go.
Oh no, I have regrets of that. This thing, I wake up at least once a week thinking, why didn't I go in that day? There were the 3 days I didn't go in, or I didn't surf pipeline. I've been there 4 or 5 days. I think Richie had only arrived the day before, and Pipe was breaking third reef. There were 2 guys in. And it was offshore, and Richie, being Richie, was like, yeah, come on, and he was psyching himself up, and I'm sat there looking at him going, right, he's psyching himself up to go and surf this, and I'm like, my God, what, he's doing that, and Nate's kind of like, yeah, and they've got like 7 6s under their arms, and I'm like, whoa, and I'd had my first pipe wave. I dropped in on someone, 2-3 days before. It freaked me out completely. 6 foot wave. I was like, dream. Guy. I was alongside a guy, and I was kind of looked at him, and I was like, yeah, we got this. We're going to split this peak nicely. I'll go pipe. You go backdoor, and he decided to go the other way, and I was, oh my God, it's a horrendous mix-up. And I was just remember being stood. He was a natural foot. I was a goofy foot, just like almost holding hands, looking at each other at the bottom of my first wave of pipe. And I was like, my God! I just went straight into the beach.
This isn't how you saw it.
No, I was like Rick Kane moment. I was
Rick Kane.
Just like somebody's gonna be. I was just waiting for the wolf pack to come down and just beat the living daylights out of me, and then be. That's it. And I'd be like, that's it. I can't surf anywhere in Hawaii again.
And then Silsey and Nate get banned on account of being your mate.
Yeah. But fortunately, this guy, he was a traveller or a very, very considerate and understanding local. And I had my Welsh tan, and this guy was typically, he could have been Hawaiian. But so that experience knocked me a bit, and to then see like pipe like huge. And Silsey and Nath went in, and I said I'd take photos, and I did. Yeah.
Did you get waves?
Silsey had a few. There was not many people getting through from second reef into first reef pipe because it was just everywhere. But the guy surfed. Nath had a really good one that went through. Silsey had one, and then we went from there over to Waimea, where Silsey was staying, watched a bit of that, and the boys had a few beers, and then we came back to pipe later, and it was cleaned up and lined up, and it was like 250 of the world's best guys on it, and so yeah, regret I didn't go in that day. And in fact, no, there's only 2 times I didn't surf. The other time I didn't surf that true Welsh style. Nath, I don't know if you remember, he had a terrible accident with a board spearing him in the cheek. Mm-hmm. And we obviously had a number of stitches. His surfing was over for the trip. So he went down south, down to Waikiki, and hit some bars and met some local, like proper Polynesian Hawaiians who were on a stag do or a bucks night, and we got roped into that, and we got in at like 4 a.m, howling, hangover, drunk, and then Silsey was like, pipe, it's on, like on the phone. We got there,
yeah.
And it was super west swell, which kind of like when it's west, it just drains dry on pipe, and picture perfect, sun out offshore. Probably 6 foot when we got there, and I was like, right, just get through this hangover. And then it got like 6 to 8, and then it was like 8 to 10, and I was like, and Nate's like, come on, Vaughanie, get out there, and I was like, I don't think I can. I'm not in the right headspace here. And then a guy died, literally, like the bodyboarder got hit with a set and carried up the beach dead. He didn't make it.
Gosh.
So it was the right decision, but it was still one of those like, why did we go out and get so drunk? Why didn't we just like?
Nate is a daunting prospect though, to travel with, because I remember him posting a request not that long ago about a boat trip, and he said, right, couple of spaces going on a boat, must be willing to drink anything and go in on anything. I remember looking at that and thinking, you're all right. That's a boat trip. I'll give him this.
Yeah, I mean, I was so lucky going with Nath and sorry, I just dropped my phone there. Going with Nath and meeting up with Silsey, because they were able to say paddle out here, how to get to it. So, yeah, but in the 2 weeks trying to progress from a Welsh winter, and I think I surfed 1 for Ogmore before. And that day, yeah, and that day that I did a lot of training. I didn't drink, and we were fit. But that day that last day I didn't surf pipe. Nath was like, Vaughanie, it's just like our last day. You kind of like, there's maybe a bit of swell tomorrow, but this is it. And he made me go out literally at sunset, and it was like there were 15-foot sets, and I was like, whoa. And I had an amazing surf. I had a 7.6, and it was just a wonderful experience.
I'm sure that everybody can hear the kind of torture in your voice, but I can see the torture in your eyes as you're talking about those missed days. Back to Nathan, of course, one of Llantwit's most infamous surfers, but one of many talents to hail from the Vale town, and all forming part of a very tight-knit surf community.
Yeah. They
must have influenced your surfing. They must have pushed you on. Do you credit them to some respect with your success?
I think again, growing up, it was as a kid in the 80s. It was all about the kids in my class in school, and there was a guy called Chris Northrop who was very competitive with me, and Kieran Thompson, and Kieran's a great friend. Chris is still a friend, but we don't see much of each other. But Chris and I would have fights on the left-hand side. He pummeled me usually, but we'd have fights, and that was always about who the local sort of bragging rights. But then yeah, it was. I kind of went out. Then it was more local, in terms of perhaps a bit outside Llantwit, but in like Porthcawl, Paul Lovell was a big rival. And then I kind of found myself in a weird place where I was on my own for a few years in terms of in the town. There was a lot of good surfers, but perhaps not doing as well competitively, apart from Colin, but he was at a different stage of his surfing. And then Nath came along, and all of a sudden he sort of progressed and really quickly. And Jamie Bateman, as mentioned, and my brother were then all of a sudden they started to get really, really good. And there was like Colin Garrett, and there was a really big group of us. And I think, and other surfers, there's a lot of good local surfers. And Chris Fowler, Liam, O'Shea, really, really good surfers. But Nath was probably, for me, I kind of felt that he was leaving me behind probably at one point. And he did leave me behind. But he dragged me along as well. And he's been a fantastic friend and to me. And, you know, that 21 days on a boat trip, that was as a result of Nath. I wouldn't have gone on that front because he was so well connected through that late 90s, early noughties. He was the man, you know. He was that air game and those trips to Hawaii, and you know, you go to France and there'd be, you know, the top French guys would come up and be talking to him, where just walk past me, well, most of them anyway. So yeah, he dragged me along, and we've done a lot of trips surfing good ways, and thanks to Nath, I think
there was a period of time as well, I guess around that same kind of period, late 90s into the early 2000s, where the Welsh squad pretty much comprised the full lineup of the point at Llantwit.
Yeah, we went to Euros in Praia Grande in Portugal. Praia Grande, I'm not quite sure how you would pronounce it.
Greg Owen was there though, wasn't he? So there was
Greg, yeah, there was six. There was six open surfers then for a team, Euro team, and we had myself, Jamie, Nathan, and Colin. Now my brother could have probably walked into that team as well if he had.
And Steve Phillips must have been there.
Steve Phillips again, yeah. God, Steve, a great surfer, really, really talented. And there'd be other guys I've missed. We just had a really good crew, but that year was incredible because I think Greg and it might have been Swinnow maybe. It was 99, yeah, 99, probably Swinnow or Matt Stevens, something like that, and Greg. It was a great trip because it was, and we had Gwyn Bright with us. And there was this little bar from the beach that we would stop at after a day surfing, because we obviously all got knocked out pretty quickly by Europe's finest. And halfway up the hill, and we'd have a load of. It was the first time we did sort of drunk Corona, and then one day we decided that the surfer got sufficiently better that we should leave the bar and then go back down to the beach. And it was, anyone that knows that particular beach knows it's not a lightweight beach break. It picks up pretty much every swell going in Portugal
and every wind.
Yeah, and oh my God, we were howling, and you know, I don't think some of our surfing reflected that in front of Europe's finest.
Well, yeah, you know, I was minded as a Porthcawl, someone who's been a rival of you guys, you know, to call it the Llantwit effect. But actually, you know, you're mentioning there that it's certainly a wider factor of Welsh or British surfing. The pub, you know, that is a thing that you know our surf cultures have had to contend with, come to terms with, embrace. I don't know exactly where we stand on it. I remember going down to a British Cup with you guys. No, a British Interclubs with you guys.
Oh, that was a Llantwit weekend away as well.
Yeah, we lost to you guys at that contest, and I remember we were leading on Saturday, and then on Sunday you overtook us.
Well, we'd been to the pub the night before.
And you'd all been to Weston-super-Mare. I think you arrived late because you'd been down bailing somebody out down at the local police station or something.
The Interclubs became, you know,
But I remember driving home from that contest on the Sunday evening, and all of us were looking around thinking, what happened? We literally got robbed. You know, it was like an Alex Ferguson job on us or something. You know, like Kevin Keegan. And somebody pointed out and said, do you know what they did? They beat us because they took us on a night out. And it was a kamikaze night out to get rid of us, because you guys knew how to do it.
We outdrunk the opposition. Yeah, I think we were spearheaded by Jock once again, who every single outing with Jock is always about beer games and drinking. I mean, he's great company, great fun, but probably he might have done better in contests without him on occasion, but on that one it worked an absolute treat.
In the same way as, what's it, you know, we used the football analogy just then, you know, 97, Arsene Wenger turns up and everybody else says, oh, not fair, he's put tape over the team bar, and all of a sudden his teams start to win, and then any team that wants to compete with him has to get rid of that. You have been on record as saying that your contest results started to improve significantly when you stopped going out the night before.
Yeah. That's
Is there a correlation?
100%. I mean, anyone that knows me knows I enjoy a swig.
Well, you're currently enjoying a swig of 0% beer.
I've this year I don't know why, again, but probably flipping Nate again inspired me. He went like something like 2/3 of a year without drinking, and at the start of this year I went dry January, and
then it's carried on.
It's carried on, and I've got I might actually be able to beat Nate at something, but it's not for me. It's no reason other than going without it. It's never really troubled me. I've never had a problem with drinking anyway. But I do enjoy a swig. Yeah. And as I said, the Llantwit philosophy was the Welsh Nationals was always a weekend away, and you got caught up in that. But as people got older and they started to have kids, and I won the Welsh first when I was 32, as I said. Well, that's because most of the guys were like, oh, I don't want to go to the Welsh. I've done that. I'm doing something different. So yeah, there wasn't that trapping of drinking. But it's you say it's a UK thing.
Has it been to the detriment of some Welsh and British surfers, though? Do you think that party culture has it held us back as a nation?
Oh, without doubt, I think. I mean, when you look at what's going on, I mean, from my limited overseas competitive experience, the European nations and their culture was very different anyway. We may have caught up slightly in terms of the drinking hour change.
Right.
It certainly made a difference. Having 24-hour drinking means youngsters these days don't charge to the pub for 7 o'clock and drink as much as possible because at 11 o'clock it's shutting, and that kids don't go out till like 11 o'clock these days. I was like, what? I was like, you should be blind drunk by now. That was the kind of mentality, and it took me a while to realise that wasn't the best preparation, and regrettably.
But you watch mine, we're leaving the European Union, it'll probably go back.
Yeah, God help us. But I think you look at the kids now, and because of maybe that cultural change in terms of socially in this country, and in terms of, I mean, I look at people like Logan, Pat, Joe Morris, Key Hughes, those kids, and others. I mean, Logan, I see a lot of, and he's constantly training. He doesn't drink. They've got a much more professional
and of course,
attitude.
Emily Williams, who we spoke to, has now gone into triathlon, hasn't she? Mm-hmm. Let's put you on the spot at this point then, right? Because this is an ongoing Crest debate, right? The jockification of surf culture, right?
Right. Okay.
Me and Rob, we've set ourselves up as opposites here. I'm on the side of the jocks here. Rob's on the side of those purists. Where are you? Are you more jock now?
Well, I should give a bit of background information here as well, because we can't actually decide on a definition of jockification. It's kind of like, it's more of a vibe.
It's just something Joel Tudor said.
Well, no. It's not. But anyway, it's a movement bigger than Tudor. But I spoke to my sister this week. And she'd listened to the Gwen episode where it first got aired, and she kind of provided a definition very succinctly. And it was something along the lines of the jockification of surfing is making surfing into a football kind of thing, and it means forgetting or ignoring to some extent the kind of culture that comes along with surfing.
So it's everything becomes a brand and a business. Exactly. and all that kind of thing. And surfing is unique in that sense, isn't it? In terms of its cultural roots and the whole. I know it. You don't need a stadium and an audience. You just need
boardies and a board.
Yeah, pair of boardies and a board. Helps if it's a sunset.
Doesn't matter what time of year.
No, I've. The
boardies. We're going to come to that. The
boardies thing, I get slated for all the time.
Where are you then? Jock culture in coming into surfing a good thing?
Not for. I mean,
you're talking about these. I like athletes. They train.
Yeah, I mean, look. It's where you personally want surfing to go. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of divided opinion out there. I mean, the whole Olympics in the surfing.
You're into that.
Sorry, the Olympics, surfing in the Olympics. Rephrase that. I'm a pro of that. I can't wait to see surfing in the Olympics. But you speak to surfers out there, it divides opinion massively. And if you trawl those online websites, especially something like Surfline, and you see the comments after the
beach grips.
Oh my God! There's some of the people that are like, "Oh, it's so bad. It's awful. It's all about money and all this kind of thing." But I'm a competitor. I love competition, so I personally don't think it's a bad thing.
In that vein, we've talked about your contest successes, but now how about any regrets within your surf career?
Besides that day in Hawaii, obviously.
It's interesting you call it a surf career because I don't think my
I've got an inverted commas.
would suggest it's a career. But yeah.
Well, why isn't it?
Well, I guess. Look, personally, I probably didn't have enough confidence in my own ability. Perhaps I didn't have enough guidance. So, say Llantwit wasn't a surfing community in that sense, like perhaps Swansea, Porthcawl, Newquay, Croyd, those sorts of places. So I didn't really have anyone to kind of, once I had that good year in my 17, 18, have anyone to kind of go, right, what you should do next is this, that kind of stepping stone. And, you know, I was straight into work at 17, as I said, and, you know, that was, you know, I wasn't from a surfing family, and like you guys are, and perhaps, yeah, maybe, do I regret not having a crack at maybe going a little bit further and making it a career?
So you've been going on tour?
Yeah, you know,
competing abroad, going on one of the circuits.
Yeah, I mean, was I good enough? Honestly,
the EPSA would have been around.
Yeah, the EPSA. I mean, there was quite a few Welsh surfers. The Brian Humphreys, Anthony Storer, they all had a crack at it. Nath obviously went on and had some success, and I saw guys I looked up to, perhaps like people like Sam Lamroy who were on tour and did okay. But, you know, having grown up surfing against Russell primarily, and Spencer was a year or so older, and I didn't really touch Spencer because he was so good, so young. He was already, off doing his thing. So being against Russell, maybe I could have got dragged along with that, and maybe, I perhaps should have given it a 2-3 year crack. But that would have meant, in perhaps my family's eyes, of doing something that perhaps wasn't very constructive in terms of, you know, setting yourself up for where I am now in life, which is probably, on reflection, the right decision. But yeah,
because you were
probably an itch there that I didn't get.
You were quite settled quite early, weren't you, in life? You know.
Yeah, I had a house by 22, 23, and you know, I had kids. I was my late 20s when
which
Josh
is
was born.
Unusual for.
Most surfers, the commitment isn't something they do easily. But yeah, it was so that as a career, I think I've managed to forge a career in being present for a very long time.
Yeah, the longevity.
So your longevity, which has started in
my
the 80s.
My old man, I remember him telling me this story about coming up to you in the car park at Llantwit and telling you to go on tour, and you paid short shrift for that.
Yeah, your dad, Bob, bless him, he used to say a lot. Well, I'd say a lot, probably 3 times. I didn't hear it from anybody else. So I think, in fact, I had a conversation with you, I recall, Tom, where you said one day that to me, going back a few years, that you could pass as a reasonable pro. And I'd take it as a compliment. And so...
Probably
depends when it was said. If it was said at the interclubs, it might.
I must have been at the bar.
It was probably just after I spoke to Dad Aussie that I said I bumped into.
Yeah. So, but it's funny. People. You're right. People from other countries do judge your surfing, and a funny incident, a failing, was jumping out at Lennox Head, which anyone knows. Surf Lennox Head knows it's a hard, treacherous jump off, and we've been in that. My brother and I had stayed with a guy called Tim Cochran and Jared Sullivan, who was he was a really good surfer.
He was staying in Llantwit for a while.
Yeah, he was. And they took us surfing down Lennox, and I jumped off the rocks, and I leash caught, and I had the full mid-air retracted back very sharply by my leash that was stuck around the rocks. And I kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to get trashed here. So I literally took my leash off and got washed down the point. And apparently, my brother and Tim, who had a very distinct laugh, we were sat on the bench at the waters, kind of on the overlooking the break there, were laughing, like I could hear them laughing. And apparently, one guy's kind of saying, "Who's that guy getting drilled along there?" And I'm like, "Oh, you might have seen him, And oh yeah, that guy surfs really well. But what's he doing? Just like getting cooking it out.
Take the surf run away.
Yeah. I think the same happened to Slater at Waimea Shawbury.
I've seen Parkinson. Similarly happened to Joel Parkinson.
Yeah, it's on Free as a Dog.
Heads on Free as a Dog.
Yeah.
It can happen.
But I guess competitively, there is, I mean, I've won at Welsh, I've won a couple of British titles, so that's nice. It would have been nice to win a British Open title, but that was never an itch. But a European title would have been nice. And having made a Euro Junior final, got fourth. Russell and the Acero brothers did me off there, and then I'd made a senior Euro final and got second, and that's probably... And took off on a wave with like 30 seconds to go, and just did the worst forehand off the top, followed by a section that screamed air, and I did a floater, and it was like
that pain in your face again as you're telling us this bit.
and mate, I was with
Grimace.
the
I
worst.
like it. I'm enjoying watching all of this.
Mate, it's like I cannot explain. I've never ever cried after a contest. You know, I'm usually, I'm used to losing a lot, but I that broke me, because the worst thing is that the vest I was handed, because there was heat after heat, and the vest I was handed was stinking of booze, because the previous surfer had just won a European title, and so I literally put it on, and I was like, this is a great omen, the smell of success. I was like, quick sip, this is rather nice. And it was a very obtainable European title in some respects, with no disrespect to the surfers there, because one or two of the guys had got knocked, and we didn't have a French surfer that year.
So who did win it? Any
No, it was a Portuguese surfer whose name was, he won it like 3 years in a row, Paulo. It'll come to me in a minute. But yeah, he won it 3 years in a row, the seniors, and I just knew it was Scott Eastwood was in the final. John McCarthy from Ireland was in the final, and weirdly, John, the three, and John's not British, but he's close enough, and we were all bunched together having this kind of like tussle where we let the Portuguese guy go and get whatever wave he wanted, but I got a really good right and kind of fell on the last turn, but that put me in a good position, and having won all the heats prior, that coming out and knowing that even in the last 30 seconds, if I got it in camera and Nate was filming it, and he's like, he's going to do an air, and I can hear the ebb of disappointment as I did a safe floater, and it got like a 3.5 that it deserved, and not the 4.8 I needed, whatever. And mate, it's being on that podium in second place, and you got Dudley next to you, who's just won his second European title, and he's all like muscles and hair and slickness, and you're like, know that you're going to be back to work on Monday and probably never surfing for another 6 months. Mate, just gutted not to have won that title. Yeah, a title, European title. So yeah, that one's probably the one that hurts the most.
How did you know you weren't going to win it in 2003 though, when it got called off by the sewage and you were all still in the semis?
Probably because I was walking down to the heat. I mean, with Potts, Martin Potter, who was surfing for England.
Beatable.
He probably was in 2003, just maybe. I mean, that was. And with the Sean Holmes, like the Sean Holmes from South Africa.
This was after he'd had some large deposit in his account to go and surf for Italy, wasn't it?
Yeah,
he was busy knocking people out of the J-Bay contest as a wild card.
It was Sean Holmes in his pomp.
But you'd have done him in those ways.
It was weird. That Gran Canaria event, I got on such a roll, and the teams were full teams. Yeah, okay. There was a few of the very top guys away on either CT or QSG, I can't remember what, but there was household names there. And it was, I just got on a roll and found myself in the semi-finals main event, last 8. And yeah, the sewage outlet happened thing, but it was weird. Because before that moment, I was walking down to the beach with Martin Potter, just the two of us. And he'd been around. He was with the English team, and we kind of saw him and had a chat with him and here and there. And he was coaching me on like, hey, Vaughanie, if we smart here, we can, tactically, I'll go, you go, kind of thing, and I'll shivvy the line up, and then you come back. And he's like, do you fancy doing it? And I was like, I would have no idea what to do. So I was just like, and I was like, is he trying to play me? So he's like, because he's thinking, Christ, I can't lose to this like old Welsh bloke.
At that point, you can't lose to
so you can't lose to me. But seeing Sean Holmes was there, it's funny. We'd met Sean Holmes only a few years previous when I went to South Africa with my brother.
Nathan knew him as well, didn't he?
Yeah, Nate knew him a little bit, I think, but he was. My brother and I went to South Africa and went up to Jeffreys, and we we got friendly with Derek Hind. And we were at Derek Hind's house, and there was like Frankie Oserberger and
Oberholzer.
yeah, and Shaw and all these other guys. And it was like whoa, and we were like just random Welsh guys.
Derek Hind did turn up in Llantwit, didn't he? When he was doing that Red Bull comp or something.
Yeah, he did. He did, and he took. And Nate went on that Red Bull tour, did the Cape Town big wave towing thing. So that was gutting in terms of I never had the chance to surf against a world champion and maybe have my day. But I was on such a roll. I felt that the final was there for the taking, and it didn't happen. So that was very disappointing.
Yeah, Tom alluded to it.
Oh, so hang on, sorry. I just hastened to add, because it didn't happen, technically I finished first in equal first.
A former world champion.
Yeah, so I am a European Open title champion.
It would have been remiss of us not to mention that.
Yeah. Bizarrely, again, that I hadn't even got to the Welsh final, I think, at that point. So it was quite an achievement at the time.
Tom alluded to it earlier on, and I think it's fair to say that you're considered somewhat of a contest animal, and your results coming in all sorts of conditions. But you're, although trim and you're fighting fit, Mark.
Thank you very much.
You're a bigger guy, and
Yes.
like me, I'd imagine that you'd probably rather compete in good conditions. And you happened to be at that Thurso event. I say that Thurso event when it was quite literally flawless surf, wasn't it? And you were in it.
Yeah, it was.
Not quite to plan?
Nah, it wasn't. It was, again, it was one of those, saw the chart and was like, I can't miss this. This is too good. And I think I drove up on the Friday. I think it may have started on the Friday. So I just drove up the Thursday night, that's right, to be there for the Friday. And nobody thought it would take place on the Friday because the Saturday was going to be cooking. Absolute perfect Thursday swell. And they decided to run round one off, and they'd run some of the kids stuff on the Thursday on the East Coast, which was again flawless conditions, and they'd run a couple of heats of the Open for anyone that was around. But yeah, it was 2-3 foot really gutless weak Thurso, and I got knocked round one, nightmare, tired, driven up the night before, all the kind of things that are not great contest prep. Everyone else had been up there for a week getting used to the water, the cold, and then the next day it was
perfect.
6 to 8 foot, 6 foot mostly, but 8 foot sets now and again. Flawless, perfect Thurso, and watching all the boys get shacked in heats. But it was, the interesting thing about that was the swell that was due didn't arrive in the morning, so you had the full contest contingent all down there early, first light to get a wave, and it was flat. It was deadpan flat. And I was sat in the car and I was like, are those lines? I was like, there's some lines coming. There's some lines. They're definitely lines. So I suited up and went. And Matt Knight, who was there, was Peeney's dad, and he saw the same thing as I did. And we were out there, the two of us, and not even a wave had broken. And then suddenly out of nowhere, this 4 or 5 foot set just hit the lineup, and there was, for half an hour until everyone was in the car park, you could just see all this activity. And I just had this lovely, perfect little backhand tube, and I was like that. So, and a few surfs before and after the event, and a couple of bagpipes as well, which made the trip worthwhile. So, not the contest.
Talking of bagpipes, would it be fair to say that you still more than fancy your chances in good conditions or heavy conditions, perhaps hollow frontside tubular conditions for you against some of the current crop of young whippersnappers?
I think I would have a better chance. Yeah. So, I mean, the youngsters of the Welsh crop, I mean, Barfield is Welsh, speaks fluent Welsh, he's born in Midwest Wales on the coastline there, near Aberystwyth way, I think. And I mean, he is...
Rhys Barfield.
Yeah, Rhys Barfield. He's solid at bagpipes. I wouldn't want to heat against him. Yeah. We've had some great surfs up there, me and him. It's been really nice, actually. And people like Pat Logan and Joe and something Kieran and some of the others, and I know Rudder went up there last year and had the experience
Rudder,
and those boys will catch up pretty quick. Yeah, and they're still young, and I'm sure. But yeah, I'd probably fancy it as long as Nath doesn't enter.
Where does that comfort in I mean, like we said earlier, Llantwit's got a variety of waves, and I suppose you've got many chokes. But where does that comfort in the frontside tube come from?
I think I got a when I was a kid. I got a really good tube at Monknash, a frothy, white, watery 3-4 footer that ran for about 4 or 5 seconds. That was captured on film, and that kind of gives you can be defined by a moment. And I was only 15, maybe 14, 15, and that kind of I was 15, and that defined me as being Vaughanie. He likes tubes, and that was. But my biggest issue with getting tubed was that I couldn't get to my feet very quickly, and that was again perhaps a big ode to Tim Jones, who taught me, and Ian Simpson, who was coach at the time, and Herbie and Linda, but Tim mostly flogged me to death, prone to feet on the floor in the gym, to learn to eradicate that get up off the one knee, and that changed my surfing completely at the 17, 18 to have that quick takeoff and that tube there. And that's something I've always hunted. And when I did my first Indo trip in '96, having 4 days at macaronis and just flawless macaronis, that taught me that I wasn't as good as I thought I was by a long, long way. Yeah, I'm not even going to touch on backhand because I'm atrocious, but forehand that taught me some things, and then I just went away and worked on that, I guess, and then those ways have become more apparent.
And of course, if those are formative years, the age of 15, 16, 17, what else is forming that mindset then? Sort of what's the role that perhaps friendships in school or peer pressure, like you kind of wanting to impress parents or things like that, are these also going on alongside that kind of finding that?
What, now or
no, back then when you're 15, 16?
Oh,
17.
certainly. I mean, I was, as Colin Bright refers to me as, I was a, let's say, very confident young man, and that was knocked out of me at quite a young age by my school peers, and they made me realise who that. Although most of them weren't very close friends, but one or two were, and that made me realise that I wasn't. I need to be more humble, and that actually was it was a life-changing event for me, I would say. Having a beating, and it was amusing. It really amuses me now, because being at a party and a load of kids wanting to tie me, they nail me down and trying to shave my hair off my lower areas, my nether regions, but I was only a kid and I didn't have any. But you couldn't say that in school, because that would be like a death sentence for like being mick taken. So now I got like growing everywhere, back ears.
I mentioned parents there as well. That the day you come home from that tube in Monknash, could you say to your parents like, I got shacked in Monkey today? Like, what did they want you to do?
To be fair, my parents. With career, that surfing wasn't a career path then, not legitimately. And whilst we'd been down to Onglet and Cavalier in 1990 and seen Tom Curran, who was living there at the time, and my parents got a taster for seeing professionalism, and we went up to Hossegor and saw the event that was on at the time. It still wasn't, I don't think it was seen as the right career choice for me, put it that way. So, but they were brilliantly supportive in terms of filming us as kids. Endless.
And they liked you winning things.
Oh yeah, I think your parents are always proud of you, aren't they? So I believe my parents are proud of me.
So you do still like to put a jersey on against a youngster nowadays, but you're not. I think since the 2011 Welsh win, you've sort of been, you're in every category and having a laugh in the heats, and did that sort of give that competitive urge in you a little bit of closure?
I think you said earlier it took the monkey off your back, wasn't it?
Yeah, winning the Welsh, 2007, then it was a few more. I made a couple of finals, then in 2011 was like Llantwit, and then I won one more in 2013 after I had spinal surgery.
Yeah.
And to come back and win after that was like 3 wins, open titles, and that monkey off the back. And in terms of competitively, I didn't feel that perhaps pressure to must get a result this year, must get at least 2 or 3 results to keep sponsors happy, because that's then started doing things like going to surf better, more heavier ways to try and get footage or photos, which work quite well to appease sponsors. And that little logo on the end of my board, I've always felt comes with a responsibility of logos, you know.
This is Quicksilver, with whom you've been partnered for a very long time.
Yeah, I've been with Quick rather for coming up for 20 years, and I mean that whole thing with Quick and FCS as well came about thanks to Liam O'Shea, who's been a big noise in the industry for a long time, and I'm very grateful to Liam for his introduction, introducing me into Quick, and it's opened a lot of doors for me, and yeah, I feel responsibility to Quicksilver and FCS and John, who makes my boards, anyone that puts anything behind me.
So this is JP, Johnny Pitt.
Yeah, and FCS, all those people. I mean, John especially has been. You know, John is not a multi-billion-dollar company. He's been more than generous to me, and I'm very grateful for his support.
I think with Quick there is an extra responsibility. It's probably the most globally recognised brand in terms of surfing. So, it's been it's a good thing.
What's still to do in surfing then? What are your...
I mean, going back to that question, do I still want to compete? Yes. Do I still want to beat some of these kids? Yes. But, you know, when I turn at the beach and it's knee high, then, you know, I'm like, I can't compete with Pat, for example, in knee high surf. He's going to totally trounce me. But if it's solid, maybe. But what's still left? I still dream of maybe one more Welsh title if the ways are right. But more so, I want to... You know, this year I was hoping to do, and part of the no drinking thing, I had a bit of buying us.
I was going to
get a 710 off
for
John.
A cup of tea, and I saw a very large surfboard.
Yeah,
It barely fit in the room.
Well, I had to go with the cribber last year, and you know, it was probably a bit late for me at my age, but I had to go with the cribber. Almost drowned. That was amusing. Snapped my board. Me and Nath went out. We got yeah, it was. You know, you look at the cribber as a novelty wave, you see some photos, think, oh, it's just a big lump, but it's a big lump of heavy moving water, and it took me by surprise. I went into it lightheartedly and had a bit of a tune-in, and almost to the fact that somebody called the Coast Guard because my board had snapped. I was trying to swim in Towan side against the 40-mile-an-hour offshore, and I had to do a swim north to swim back in to get to the cliff where the rip was just running so strong. And anyway, no Coast Guard involved, but... And I felt this year that don't drink, try and give yourself a chance to go and surf waves like Mully, maybe. I mean, that's a regret. Yeah.
Yeah, you tell a good story about watching Mullet pretty heavy. I remember you saying to me that you didn't regret going in though because it took everyone in there 45 minutes to catch a wave.
Yeah, it's one of those weird. Again, the pipe experiences, Hawaiian experiences, then find yourself in Mully a few years later. Quite a few years later, and it was sun puffing offshore, not huge Mully, God, 10 maybe 15 foot sets, it's not huge, just breaking really. And I was staying with Richie Fitz, Gerald, John McCarthy I was met up with, and he was like, oh, come on, Vaughanie, we're going out, and I was like, oh mate, I've got like 2 6.3s in the car. He's like, oh, here's a 710. I was like, but I got off the ferry the night before. I'd driven through the night. I'd slept in the car. I'd surfed for 8 hours that day, and I hadn't surfed for 3 weeks. And I was like,
it's the right decision.
You know what? I'm not going to get a wave, and I haven't watched for 3 hours. Nobody did. I think John got one, and 2 or 3 other guys. And Garage was there, G-Man, and he was riding with Quick at that time. We were both sat there, and he was young, and we've both been enjoying pumping Bundoran and Pampa as well. And I was like, you going out? And he was and ahhing, and he was young at that time. Now look at him. And that's
ripping through QS seats. He was in a pretty good position when the QS stopped this year. Pampas is still on in your crosshairs then?
Yeah, those Pampa, there's 1 or 2 spots I got my eye on up north which are not on the kind of known map of surfing.
Any competitive goals? I mean, you've technically hung up the international jersey, but is there any circumstance in which you'll surf in a competition on foreign shores again?
I've never, if I got a quick invite to the Macaroni's Pro, I'd be straight on that flight, even in a COVID outbreak. But I think, maybe a world Masters or something. In,
So
in
you might get
and,
to surf against some legends as well.
yeah, I'd love to surf against a couple of my heroes. some
You've
of
got
my
unfinished
Oki.
business with Potts, obviously. haven't
Yeah, yeah, Potts and Sean Holmes, they got away lightly. But I don't know. I think I would like that. Perhaps Masters in the right venue. It would have to be not so much about who's surfing against, but the right venue. And as you know, Rob, I hung up my.
Well, I was going to say, you better not say that you're going to go back in because we had a party.
Yeah, we had a retirement party in.
With bunting and everything.
Yeah, in Biarritz for the Worlds.
And you're going to be a dad again.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
Have you checked your phone? Because it might have happened. while we've been recording
Yeah,
this.
it's been on silent. That's a good point. No messages. That's good. I mean, I've already blessed to have 3 wonderful children, and now I've got another on the way. I mean, Josh is my eldest, who absolutely loves the road trip. I mean, never known anyone who doesn't even surf be happy to sit in the car, to drive all the way to Thurso, to then just sit in the car and watch me surf. Bless him. And Isabel, who's she's just a wonderful, beautiful young lady and surfs a bit. I enjoy my time with her, and hopefully she does with me. And then I've got little Phoebe. She's only 1. We had quite a dramatic arrival for her last year, which you may recall.
I do, yeah.
That was for Beth, my partner. It was a life-changing experience.
I mean, I've got to be fair to Beth. She's been through a hell of a couple of years, and she's had a real torrid time again with pregnancy, and just a pillar of strength, and I'm very proud of her and very lucky. So, as I am with all my family members, brother, mother, father, extended family, I'm a very lucky guy.
But Phoebe's just magical, and then we don't know what we're having. So whatever this next one is, that's going to be a great surprise, and that'll happen in the next month. So
Phoebe aware of what's happening? Is she sort of around about enough to get excited?
we've got a walk in where hopefully we can get a potty trained in the next month.
Good luck with that.
Thanks, Tom.
Finally, then, Mark, when we spoke the other day, you were kind of pondering how you're perceived by the wider surf community. I think the local Llantwit community will leave you in no doubt how you're perceived.
Yeah, definitely.
But you were wondering whether people think you're an overachiever or an underachiever. But let me tell you that you were perceived as the lunatic that wears board shorts throughout the year.
I think the whole reason I said that to you is because I'm like, who's going to listen to me talk for an hour or so? But yeah,
They've been listening to get to this bit. This is the
Yeah.
yeah.
This
They
is
want to
the
hear the
incentive
boardies.
to carry
The
on
boardies.
listening.
On
the
our artwork
boardies.
at the beginning, we're going to have boardie enthusiast.
Well, there's probably multiple reasons. 1, I don't catch a lot of waves. 2, I need to lose weight. And they're 2 excellent ways of losing weight and catching more waves to keep warm. And if I'm really honest, perhaps there was a little fraction of a bit of trying to keep that little sponsorship exposure going in some way, and it worked because I finally got an interview with Steve at Carve, and I've been pushing for that for 30 years, so I got there in the
By
end.
any means.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta do stupid things.
Because you do wear those things up till, like, what is it, October? Are you still in
You were in
boardies
November,
October?
though, weren't you?
I went December. I went December the.
And now you
14th.
told me, because I surfed the other day in boardies, and you said, hang on, no, that's not boardies, you're wearing a neoprene jacket.
Oh, you
Your
can't wear
idea of
neoprene.
boardies is just boardies.
Oh yeah, they're like neoprene jackets. That's cheating.
That's January stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I last year I went boardies from April to about October. Maybe November. The previous year was and there will be the odd occasion I'm like, I'm not fancy boarding today. I mean, I had a week of it. My guts were raw after that hot spell, so I've donned neoprene today. So, but yeah, boardies is the way forward for sure. Surf better as well. You're quicker, looser.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I have to say a big thanks to you for being our guest today.
Thank you guys. It's been a pleasure.
How have you? Yeah, I was going to say, how have you enjoyed the Crest experience?
Well, it's I'm dreading listening back to how awful I sound, and but yeah, it's been fascinating. I've never done anything like this, so I would recommend it to anyone.
I'm pleased you enjoyed. And if you've enjoyed listening in, then do shout about it from the rooftops, listeners. There's a strong summer roster of guests to come, and plans to further this jocks versus purists debate in, shall we say, some more pugilistic circumstances. For more on that, a quick word from Tom.
Yeah, so we've had plenty of warm feedback from listeners on the Surf Trip Nightmares specials. It's clear that you guys do love a one-off change to the formula from time to time. And so that is what's going to happen in a couple of episodes' time. After we've let this debate simmer just a little more, we're going to hold an official episode in which we debate the issue formally. We're going to bring in a purist, a jock, and a judge to help us decide once and for all who has won for that hour, at least.
That's the Mitchell and Webb sketch, isn't it? The football one.
It has never been decided who has won the football. Nah, never heard of it. Never heard it. Anyway, that episode, when it comes to fruition, along with this one and all our back issue, can be found on YouTube through Apple Podcasts or Spotify as standard. Subscribe, why don't you? And then you won't miss a minute. We also love feedback via email, castcrest@gmail.com, or on our Instagram. And if I can point out that we are in receipt of all the stories that have been sent to us so far, and we're collecting them up to have a little look at what to do with some travel episodes down the line. So thanks. If you haven't had a reply from us yet, we've read them and we've enjoyed them, and they're going to get used. We're also in the water every now and then too, so if you listen, say hi and tell us what you think.
And the subject of our next episode is also in the water from time to time at places like Chopu. Yes, you heard me right. You may have heard of the Welshman who rode Tahiti's famous end of the road slab after Carve ran a big feature at the end of his mammoth round the world surf expedition. Well, we'll be hearing about that and more from the proverbial horse's mouth as Rob Miles joins myself and Ellie in another Garden Studio spectacular. The stove will again be running high and pure. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks, Vaughanie, for coming.
No problem. Thank you for having me, guys.
And see you guys soon.
Oil Vaughan.
1, 2.